Hello, my name is Rob Evans, and I'm Vermont's School Security Liaison Officer for the Agency of Education and Department of Public Safety. And I'm here with Charlotte McCorkel. Charlotte is a member of Vermont's School Crisis Planning Team, and she represents the mental health profession, and she is with First Call at the Howard Center. And today, Charlotte and I are going to have a conversation about doing home visits and the importance of taking safety and security into account in the planning phases as well as the delivery phases of a home visit that you may be making during the 2017-2018 academic year. So Charlotte, thanks for being here with us.
Thank you for that introduction, Rob. Of course, both mental health professionals and educators, school administrators have been doing home visits to meet with young people and families for many, many decades. It's a deep-rooted practice. I've been with First Call at the Howard Center for the past 9 years now and have been to numerous homes in Chittenden County. And I know that often educators and other professionals are in homes as well. So this is a really important topic to talk about because, of course, we're going to homes because we might have a concern or want to check in on a child or family, but we also want to maintain safety both for that family and for ourselves. It's a paramount consideration. And so we need to weigh the benefits and risks while thinking about safety. And today we will talk about preparedness, physical safety, presentation of self, skills, and then finally leave you with some resources for the conversation. So when we think about preparedness, I really do think about a checklist and starting by asking a number of questions, thinking about what's the purpose of the visit, the intended outcome, what am I hoping for? Is a home visit the best way to achieve this, or is there another way to accomplish this goal? Is the visit likely to be perceived as friendly or adversarial? What's known about the family? What's known about the neighborhood? Are there safety concerns? And then what resources are available to support the visit?
And Charlotte, on the checklist in the preparation phase of all of this, I would assume that even though this seems somewhat like a mundane task, it's good until it's not good when you're actually doing the visit. So the things that you can do in the preparation phase to make sure that if things do take place that aren't safe once you get there, you have done all the things ahead of time to make sure that you've got the resources once you get on the ground there, right?
That's absolutely right. Sometimes a crisis can happen really quickly or a safety concern can emerge without warning. And so the more we do in advance, the better prepared we are when something does come up. And of course, most of the time nothing comes up, but we do need to be prepared. So I think spending a little bit of time really thinking about purpose and intention can be helpful in thinking about preparedness. One thing that's important is figuring out how to notify the family of the visit. And if there's a reason that the visit needs to be a surprise, really thinking about that. Typically, surprise visits don't go well. We, as a culture, want to know who's coming to our front door. And when someone's ringing the doorbell unexpectedly, that could be unnerving. So often a call ahead can pave the way for a successful visit, but there are some times where a surprise visit is needed. For example, if the family doesn't have a phone, there isn't a way to get a hold of them besides showing up at the front door. And then, of course, we want to think about relationships. Who knows the family best? It could be that an administrator is going to the home and needs to gather information from the classroom teacher or the school nurse or other school staff that could best inform the administrator or the person who's going to the home about the family. And then also thinking about whether there are siblings in the home that go to other schools and gathering information from counterparts at another school that could have really helpful information. One thing to consider is whether there are other professionals working with the family, a mental health provider or a DCF worker, and whether you have consent to speak to that provider. That person may have really helpful information as well. And then, of course, if possible, we would recommend that people go in pairs, especially if there are known concerns, and bringing another administrator, another classroom teacher with you to do the visit, if at all possible. So we know a lot about the students in our schoolhouses day to day, but it's important to think about what is known about the family. Is there a history of aggression or violence? are there firearms or weapons in the home? Is that something that's known? If you don't know, I would just assume yes, that there are firearms or pets in the house. We know that 1 in 4 households in Vermont has firearms. And when I'm doing a home visit, I always ask really openly and frankly, are there firearms in the home? If the answer is yes, can they be put away or locked away during the visit, or is there a safer place for us to meet, even if that's outside the home on the front porch? And then also wondering who may be at the home when you get there. And of course, some people are very comfortable with pets, but some people have allergies or may worry about an aggressive dog, and so asking if pets can be put away or just having general knowledge about that. And then we also need to be aware not just of the home, but also of the neighborhood. If you don't have a school resource officer or he or she isn't available, it may be wise to call local law enforcement, Vermont State Police, or the local police department to gather information about the family or neighborhood. And then lastly, is an interpreter or cultural broker needed? Is there someone best to connect to the family that could be the link between the school and the family or home?
And Charlotte, just because let's say this is the 5th time that we're going to a residence or a specific home, that doesn't mean the 6th time's going to be okay. This is a preparedness process that really should be undertaken every single time, because situations may have changed, backgrounds, dynamics may have changed, right?
That's right. Sometimes things can change for a family over the course of an evening or a weekend, and extended family could have moved in. Dynamics in the neighborhood could have changed dramatically. So of course, the more you know and the stronger relationship you have, you can use that knowledge and relationship to plan accordingly, but you do still need to be prepared and to be on guard to respond to something if it does happen. So then, lastly, related to preparedness, thinking about this cycle of plan, do, check, act. And really being sure that there are other people who have your back, who are prepared themselves to support you if something goes wrong. So an important question to ask is who at the school knows where you're going. This could be an administrative support in the front office. This could be a colleague or the school resource officer. But at least one point person at the school should know the address of the home visit and what time you're expected to be back. And then if you're not back at that time, what is the plan? Should they call your cell phone? Will you have cell reception? Should they send the police out to check on you? What's the backup plan? Most of the time for home visits, if there aren't known safety concerns, likely the police won't be involved, but there could be some situations where the police should know where you're going, potentially calling the police ahead of time if the visit has a possibility of becoming adversarial. And if the police know ahead of time where you're going, this could expedite the police response if that is needed. And then making sure you are best prepared, having directions, thinking about the road conditions and the weather, thinking about your own emotional and physical limitations in general and for that specific day. And then thinking about logistics like, do you have snow tires if we've just had a snowstorm? Do you have enough gas to get both to where you're going and back? Sometimes those little things in our busy lives can make a world of difference. And is it possible to do a drive-by in advance to familiarize yourself with the home or the neighborhood, possibly the day before or the week before? Certainly the most important message is that if it doesn't feel safe, if it doesn't feel right, don't do the home visit, or if you get there and have those feelings, then leave the home visit. There's a lot in our communities that we know. Certainly school educators are aware of their local communities, but it doesn't necessarily mean we know every corner of the communities in which we work, and we don't want to take our safety for granted. One thing to think about is how long will it take for the police or law enforcement to arrive if you do need to call them. In some communities that would be a matter of minutes, in other communities that would be a much longer time. And then again, thinking about the neighborhood, what is around and who is around. And sometimes when there are lots of people around, that increases a sense of safety. Sometimes that could decrease a sense of safety. So being aware of that for yourself. And then thinking about, especially in our rural communities, is there cell phone reception? But even in more suburban areas, even in Chittenden County, there are big pockets of areas where there isn't cell phone reception. and having a backup plan for that, whether it's knowing that there's a gas station nearby where you could pull over and ask to use the phone, or that at a certain area you will have reception again. So we've talked about making sure you have snow tires if that's needed, or having gas, but there are some other considerations related to accessibility. And for your car specifically, when you arrive at the home, it's recommended that you park for an easy exit, or park in such a way that you don't get blocked in. One thing I was taught early in my home visiting days is to face the car when I'm parking in the direction that I'm going to leave. And if possible, parking on the street, or parking under street lights if that's possible, just again to increase safety. We know in Vermont it can get dark really early in the day in the winter. And then making sure that I lock my car, that there's nothing valuable in the car that's visible, keeping my cell phone in my pocket, or if I'm carrying a bag with me, making sure that my phone and my car keys are really readily available. When I get to a home, I'm constantly assessing what's going on. What do I hear? What do I see? Thinking about what a potential exit strategy would be. Again, even if it's a home I've been to before, a place where I might feel more at ease or more comfortable, I still need to be somewhat on guard in case a safety concern emerges. And if I don't feel 100% safe when I first enter, I keep my bag or belongings with me rather than putting them down. When I'm knocking at the door, I'm listening to see what I can hear, and being extra alert, listening for other voices, maybe people leaving from a different exit, listening for pets or animals. And then I try to meet with families in an open space. Often that's the living room or kitchen, typically staying downstairs in a home rather than going upstairs. Certainly I don't want to meet in a small closed door situation. Certainly try to avoid meeting in bedrooms if that's at all possible. And really letting the family take the lead on what the culture is, arriving at the house, if I should keep my shoes on or take my shoes off, and letting the family direct where we may sit down, even if, again, that's outside the home. And letting the family direct that can strengthen a relationship and the rapport right away early in the home visit. It's important to think about other things that you're seeing. Are there signs of drugs and alcohol? What's the noise level? Do you see other people in the home? Items that could be used as weapons. And then in those early minutes of arriving, how is the family or student relating to you, and what are their reactions to your presence? If everyone seems relaxed and at ease, then I may relax a little bit too. But if they feel agitated or challenging or start to make threats, I'm going to be keeping all of the preparedness questions in mind that I asked before I arrive.
So Charlotte, really is, once that initial engagement takes place, it really is all about situational awareness. That if stuff begins to not feel so good, or you see things that may be of concern, that's the time to be ending the conversation and making that respectful exit out the door. Whether you see things on a dining room table, or the conversation begins to turn the wrong way, or folks that you didn't think were going to be in the house are there, that's the time to be reevaluating the importance to maintain, in that conversation, as opposed to cutting it off and I've got another meeting I've got to get to, that kind of thing.
That's right. It's good to have that kind of exit strategy. If you see something immediately when you walk in the home and feel unsafe, to say, I was looking forward to the visit, but my boss just called me. I need to head right back to the school. Or, I feel my phone vibrating in my pocket. I need to take this call. I think it's going to be really important. Mm-hmm. Or to say, I know I just got here, but my boss is expecting a call from me in the next 5 minutes. We needed to follow up on something else. And creating that out for yourself if you feel unsafe at any point. It is really paramount that you think about the intention and purpose of your visit. Often that's to check in and to build a relationship and to help a family and child engage potentially in a different way. And it's certainly not your role to be figuring out threats and aggression and big safety concerns in the context of you being present in that home. That can be figured out once you arrive back at the schoolhouse with your colleagues, or potentially with the police or mental health professionals or DCF.
Thanks.
So other considerations, presentation of self. Certainly, when I know I'm going to be doing home visits, I wear clothing and shoes that are easy to move in. I avoid bringing valuables into the home and lock them in my car. And I only bring stuff into the home that I know I'm going to need. Typically, it's a phone and my pager and a pen and a notebook, and I leave everything else in my locked car. And then often, we're asked to carry our school IDs or our agency IDs. And for a home visit, I carry that with me in my bag, but I'm not wearing it to protect the privacy of the family that I'm visiting. So it's really important also to check in with yourself. How are you feeling? What's your own energy level? How did you feel about this home visit? It's really important to trust your instincts and your own sense of safety. It's also important to have some sense of how the student and family feels about you and how they're perceiving your verbal and your nonverbal communication. And then being aware of your own biases. Of course, we all have biases we carry into a situation. And especially when we're in a home for the first time, there's a lot that we're noticing and observing and judging just by human nature. And the most important thing for attitude is to see if we can get into a place where we feel calm, confident, alert, and then really, really aware.
And Charlotte, I would imagine that there are folks that do this really, really well, and then there's some folks that may feel a challenge. They're a new principal, a new administrator, and now they're tasked with having this responsibility. One technique might be that find a partner to go with you on these that is really good in this, to kind of oppose the strengths and challenges that individuals might have. If you're not feeling comfortable, make sure you bring somebody with you that does have a very large comfort level associated with doing these home visits, right?
Absolutely, especially in the beginning of your professional career, or if you're new to a district, even new to meeting the family or going to that home, it's great to go in pairs. Another strategy would be to find a common interest with the family, even before the visit, but to identify that really early on in the visit. They have dogs in their home, you have dogs, to share your love of dogs, or to see that they have baseball paraphernalia all over the home and to connect with that hobby or interest as well. So in keeping safety first, there are some kind of mindsets that can really increase our safety. We've talked about the idea of knowing yourself, but also knowing how you may respond to conflict. And for some family dynamics or personalities, it may be best to send someone who has a different relationship or a different presentation to the home than you going yourself. Then thinking about how we actively listen to the family, to the concerns, how we may respond to the anger, and focusing on what we can do and our role going to the home. When I go as a mental health professional, I am really clear about my role and what the potential outcomes of the visit are. I've been on home visits with educators a few times, and they talk about wanting the student to come back to the school if that's the goal, or they're really clear about the outcome that they're hoping for. Sometimes we're feeling really nervous inside, but we can do things to look calm and confident, and having that outward persona can go a long way. But then maintaining a professional boundary, not giving out personal information that could be identifying or harmful in some way beyond the visit. And with that, recognizing our own limitations with our role and the tools that we do have to use during the visit. So there are a few very specific skills that can help if communication becomes heightened or things feel tense during the visit. One is selective ignoring, not thinking about inappropriate or destructive statements, and instead actively listening and using words of encouragement. I think many educators do this quite a bit with young people in their schools, and remembering to use those same skills with adults or other family members who may be in the home. And then if someone's presenting as actively angry, trying to find common ground, again, selectively ignoring or using empathy, and then trying to reframe as best as possible when there's a difficult situation and sharing alternative perspectives. So along with this training, we've created a set of guidelines in the topic areas we've covered that go through the questions. So we want to share that with you as a resource, and that will be made available. But we also wanted you to think about other resources that could be available to best prepare and execute a home visit. That could be meeting with the crisis planning team in your school or a similar internal team to talk about the pros and cons of a home visit or the logistics. It could be consultation with the school nurse or the school-based clinician or another mental health provider, consultation with local law enforcement. It could be reaching out to your local community mental health center or the crisis team as needed, maybe to give an alert or if there's a release to gather information. And then depending on the family that you're working with, it may be helpful to come prepared with a list of local resources that could benefit the family or provide additional support. And then lastly, as a resource, sometimes either as an individual or with a small team of colleagues, you could play the what if game and go through possible scenarios so that you have explored all the options possible if a situation does escalate, and you can be comfortable knowing ahead of time what those options are.
Charlotte, I really appreciate you having this important conversation, because these are things that are taking place each and every day across the state of Vermont. So I think it's important information to get out. I would also say, as an additional resource, Charlotte, has been very generous with her time, but also she's a member of the school crisis planning team. So if you have specific questions, folks can go directly to the Vermont School Safety Center's website under membership, and Charlotte's contact information at First Call at the Howard Center is there if you need to get any specific additional information from her as well. And again, for not only this, but other school safety planning resources, again, we direct folks to go to the Vermont School Safety Center's website. And thanks for your participation today.